What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Long Haul Fitness again. As always, I'm Nick, and we got a repeat guest this time. My first repeat guest. I've got Brad Puglisi again. What's going on, dude?
What up, man? How you doing?
Good, brother. How's that hernia? Better?
It's much better. Yeah, it was rough for the first 2 days, and I'm like walking around. I got a little pump session in earlier at the apartment gym. Like, it's much better than I thought. It's much more manageable than I thought it was gonna be.
Yeah. When you said that you were going to the gym right quick, I was like, oh shit, here we go.
Yeah. I was like making 20 pounds just feel like the heaviest thing in the world.
It'll probably be really good for you. Like,
Yeah.
I had somebody, or I heard somebody say recently that one of the best things to happen to Hunter Labrada was his pec tear. Because it gave him time to kind of let his body freshen up a little bit. So, especially with your training style and how hard you push yourself, it's probably a good.
A little break is always kind of nice because I always feel much. I mean, I hate it obviously, but I always feel like much fresher going back.
Yeah, that's how I felt after coming back from quarantine. Like I felt like I had to grease the gears and stuff again. I felt a little wonky, but like once I started going, I was like, oh yeah, this feels good.
Plus, I love that feeling of like just like itching to train. Like sometimes you kind of lose that after a while, like after 12 weeks of training hard. But this whole time, I'm already just like fucking like
yeah. So with the split that I've been doing from John, I'm only training 4 days a week right now. And that ended up like that's driving me nuts because I work in Destination Dallas where like I watch Branch Warren, I watch Hunter Labrada work out. I watch these guys work out on a regular basis. It's like I need to be doing something, right? So it drives me crazy, but then at the same time, it's been really cool because like by the time that next session comes around, I'm like ready to do it. So did you just get a thing about your network connection being unstable? Okay, well, just me. Cool. Let's hope it stays good. But so what we're going to get into today and kind of touch on the topic. We're just going to explain the difference of our training styles compared to the average routine that you hear regularly of like, regardless of the body part split, it's like 3 to 4 sets of 10 to 12 or 12 to 15 or whatever the rep range is. But on paper, it looks like a lot because you're doing 3 to 4 sets, but really like your first 2 sets are pretty easy. Your third set is kind of moderate. And then the last one is usually pretty intense, but it's probably far from what you could do if you didn't fuck around with those stupid sets that you did at the beginning.
Yeah. Most people kind of use the feeder set approach.
Right.
Where they do maybe if they're doing 5 sets of 10 to 12, they're doing, a warm-up weight for 10 to 12, a slightly heavier weight, and then they're not actually hitting failure at 10 to 12, what I would consider real failure until maybe the last 2 or maybe last set. Usually, most of the time, it's usually just the last set.
Right, and something that I told you, I had Chris Tuttle and John Jewett on in the last one, and like that was fucking awesome. But something that we discussed in that is like most people, unless you are like an advanced lifter or like a high level intermediate, you don't really know what failure is. Like, how many times have you seen videos of guys talking about, oh, this was my top set and like I could only get 8, and you watch the video and it's like, dude, you had like 4 more.
I do that all the time. Yeah, I'm like, what was that? Like, why'd you stop?
That was a top set that looked like a warm up. Like there needs to be more weight, or you need to be working fucking harder. Like, so to begin with, most people don't understand what failure is. And then another thing that we touched on was like the 3 to 4 set thing is okay for people who are just like getting started. They're just getting active training. They're in their first few years. It's like, okay, fine. You're not going to push yourself so far that that's going to fuck you up. Like it's going to work. Anything you do at that level is going to work. But once you get higher up, you have to start to switch things in order to continue to make progress.
Yeah, because we know what's the main driving force of hypertrophy, and it's a novel stimulus. You have to have something new to put your body under to make it adapt. That's how you build muscle. That's the process of building muscles, being exposed to a novel stimulus. So the first year or two of training, everything's novel. So you can go in, do 3 sets of 10, even if they're half-ass sets, it's still something your body's never experienced before. It's going to adapt. But it's once you reach those more advanced levels where the progress begins to slow, where you need to kind of look at your training and say, is what I'm doing actually the most effective way to approach things?
Right. And then again, we also have to separate the people like us, like bodybuilders, and the general population. Like general population, the people who are just looking to put on a little bit of muscle, lose a little bit of body fat. The 3 to 4 by 10 to 12 or whatever the fuck your rep range is fairly effective. You know, like for the most part, I'm not going to teach fucking 45-year-old Sally how to go in there and do an all-out top set of 8 to 10. Like that's not going to happen. Like, so what we are discussing are the subset of people who are looking to put on muscle and lose body fat and change their physique, right? So we're putting aside the normies.
Just training for muscle, basically. I mean, that's kind of that should be the niche that we're focusing on, because exactly. I mean, obviously, all this applies to people who want to just lose weight too, but it becomes a lot more complicated when your only goal is to put on muscle and gain strength.
For sure. And it sounds really straightforward when it comes to building muscle and getting stronger. It's like, okay, just add some more weight to the bar and do more reps. Like it sounds pretty simple, but at the end of the day, there's so many different variables that can come into play on whether or not you continue to progress forward. Yeah. It's like, you want to try and minimize as many variables as possible. The less you have to manipulate, the better. Like,
yeah,
people get so caught up in like, oh, I got to get this pump, so I got to do this drop set, and I got to do this super set over here, and then I got to do this cluster set, and then I got to do this 100 reps set. Like, it's all this stuff that makes them feel like they're training intensely. Whereas, why don't you learn how to be fucking intense in the 10 to 12 that you have prescribed for your 2 sets?
Right. And it always blows me away that like how much attention to detail people will put into their nutrition and their diet, and they'll have everything set in stone to where they can make small adjustments to get results. But then when it comes to training, they're like, I know my body, I'll just go by feel. I'll just train by feel. And you're missing off on that's half the cake right there.
For sure. And I mean, like, I'm not going to sit here and act like I've been doing this forever, because for the majority of my career with fitness and bodybuilding, I was doing that. Like I would come in, I would have a set schedule as far as like, I know I'm training chest this day, back this day. Like I knew what my split was, but to keep it fun and exciting, I would do different exercises every time in a different order and like change things. Yeah. And like,
that's a big thing. Everybody needs it to be like a fresh workout, you know, like what's really fun and exciting is progressing smallly every fucking workout. Like at the end of 6 months, the 5 muscles you gain versus the 1 muscle you gain doing it this way. That's the 5 muscle looks a lot more exciting to me personally.
Right. And the thing I was getting at with that is like not having a plan and just going in and doing something because you feel like doing it that day. You can't correlate, like you can't track the progress that way. So like you said, people are meticulous with their diet. If they're meticulous with their diet, like they're paying attention to all these things because they're trying to build muscle, but they're just half-assing the training, just doing whatever. And like 1 week they want to do incline dumbbells, the next they want to do incline hammer loaded press. Like,
not the muscle.
They're similar. Sure, it's the same muscle group, but it's not necessarily the same load. So how do you know that that is a novel stimulus? Like,
right. That's the thing. So if we've identified that like a novel stimulus is what builds muscle, what makes your body adapt, then the only real way to standardize a novel stimulus and make sure that you're producing a novel stimulus every time you work out is through progressive overload training. And that's the difference, because there's kind of one field that they just go into the gym and try to damage the muscle as much as possible. Drop sets, high reps, blah, blah, blah. And then that will drive hypertrophy to an extent. Right. But once you get to a certain amount of muscle, there's nothing novel you can add on top of that. You just got to do an extra drop set or something. There's no way to actually progressively track that over years. And that's the thing. So if we know that a novel stimulus is what we need, really tracking our lifts and progressively overloading our lifts is the only way to do that consistently for a long period of time.
Right. And then especially like in a phase like I'm in right now with the cut, like at this point now, I'm basically at an 8-week out period. Like I just set my photo shoot date. So that's where we're at as far as my prep is going. So right now calories are pretty low. Like I don't have a lot of food to go into my system to go towards recovery. So if I now go to the gym and I completely bury myself to where I can't recover from that training session immediately or as quickly as possible, like it's going to take longer because I have less fuel to use for that stress and that adaptation response and that recovery. um, if I keep just burying, doing all this extra work, I'm going to get to a point where it's just going to stall, like, and I'm going to look flat. I'm going to start losing strength. Body fat will come up. I'll start to retain water, like all those things, because I've pushed myself further than what my nutrition can handle.
Exactly. That you see that all the time with people in like doing a competition prep. That's when most people are the most motivated. So they just start busting ass in the gym, doing triple drop sets, and they're accruing so much muscle damage that they can't recover from. And when your only real goal in a comp prep should be really to do the minimum, because you're just trying to maintain your muscle, maybe creep up your performance a little bit, but you shouldn't be doing all these drop sets and stuff, because those are intensity techniques only geared towards muscle damage. Right. And muscle damage in a deficit is going to do nothing for you except for just push you over the edge recovery wise.
Because you're already running that fine line of like losing muscle and losing body fat. Like,
yeah,
if you push that envelope too far, instead of pulling body fat off, which is a difficult fucking thing to do, it's going to start to pull protein out because it doesn't have enough to recover those damaged muscles. And the only protein that you store in your body is muscle fiber. So if you're in a calorie deficit like that, it's very easy to start losing muscle by doing too much. Now, on the opposite side of that, where if you are growing and you are in a phase where calories are higher and you are in a surplus, I would say that is a time where things like drop sets, cluster sets, supersets, what have you, can be introduced a little bit more often because you have such a surplus of food. But you still have to make sure that you're not doing too much, because there is still a point of like diminishing returns even in that period of time where you're eating.
Yeah, that's why you got to identify what intensity techniques produce muscle damage and what intensity techniques produce a progressive overload or adaptive response, because they're not always the same thing. You know, a drop set is only gonna, that's a tool Walker's kids here. It's a tool to just produce more muscle damage. So the only time that you can recover from more muscle damage is in a surplus of calories.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Come on. Yeah, I know you want to. Yeah, come on. Just go ahead and
Walker's kid playing with a dog.
Oh yeah, dude, don't put your butthole in the camera. Jesus. Have some decency. Anyways, so yeah, I mean that's definitely something that I think people need to keep in mind. And the the thing that's been so different about the phase that I'm in right now than any other year is like I'm doing far less than I ever have when it comes to a cut. And I would say I look better than usual. And at the same time that I look better, my strength is increasing like weekly. And
that's how you know you're in a sweet spot, is if you're in a deficit and your strength's still climbing.
Right, for sure. And like it's not that my food's not low. Like I'm fucking hungry. I've got one meal left and I'm trying to stretch this bitch out. But
you're dropping weight fast too.
Huh?
You're dropping weight pretty fast too in your check-ins.
Yeah. So I don't know if you like read that long post I put up today or if you just like skimmed through it. But
what about you eating extra fruit?
Yeah, dude. It's the stupidest shit. I was all stressed out about it and I was holding the tension, like getting pissed off at people because I had this dumbass stress. And then like I just had this epiphany moment of like, why am I hiding this? I'm like a kid, like it's like a little kid did something bad and his dad's gonna find out. Like it was so dumb. But yeah, we had a little like back up because last week for whatever reason Wednesday night and then most of the day Thursday I couldn't get out of this hypoglycemic hole. Like I was just dizzy and like couldn't think straight and like was about to fall over, and like it literally lasted almost like 12 to 14 hours. Like it was aggressive. So he brought my food back up for a little bit, and we're starting to like creep it back down now. But I was 212 the other day, and then this morning I was 207. So the weight back up for a little while, but now we're at the lowest that we've been so far, and we're actually eating more than I was prior. So it's been really cool. It's been a lot of fun, like learning from him and from John.
Yeah, they definitely know what they're doing for sure.
Yeah. Now, where you and I differ, I think for the most part, we agree on most things, but we differ just slightly as far as how we gauge intensity, is pretty much the best way to put it.
Yep.
I see how well your style is working for you, and I think we can agree how well my style is working for me. So
Yep.
we both see the same sides of it. It's just a matter of what we figure out works best for us. So this is not an argument between us. This is a discussion.
Yeah, I mean, there's fucking 10,000 ways under the sun to train. I mean, there's people get big and all kinds of things.
People take things so sensitive these days, so I wanted to put that disclaimer in there in the beginning because, like, we're talking about training. I'm gonna let you do however the fuck you want to. You're gonna let me.
The level we're at of discussion, we're picking it apart so much that like it's still training. It's still hard training, you know. Like
to try and learn, like
right.
So like I said, we differ in the way that we gauge intensity. So we both do the same thing, like working up to anywhere from 1 to a high end of 3 working sets on an exercise for a given rep range. And in that given rep range, you are focused on complete failure, whether that's muscular, like typically you are aiming for muscular failure, but obviously in certain lifts, technical failure is going to come into play because the
point where I couldn't do another rep that I would be satisfied with the execution. That's kind of when I stopped.
Right, exactly. So especially on things like squats or RDLs or something that's putting you in a position that could potentially be dangerous, it's more focused on how many reps can I do with perfect form where the first one looks like the last one, and I'm gonna if I try to do another one, I could really fuck myself up. Like, so that's what technical failure is. Muscular failure, it's kind of in the name there. You can't lift it again. The muscle will not fire to get that weight up or down or whatever it is you're doing with it. So you take it all the way. So if you say your top sets are 2 for 8 to 10, you are going all out on each one of those, and you are failing 100% in that rep range.
Yeah.
Now, what John has transitioned me into has been using reps in reserve. So kind of the opposite spectrums of these two things, but similar enough to where it's effective because
progressive overload.
Right, exactly, because that's the biggest thing is moving up time. Now, I'm not a study guy, so this is literally shit that I'm hearing from other people a lot smarter than me. So the studies are showing that at least getting close to failure is what elicits that growth and adaptation response in the muscle when it comes to training.
It's the window of effective reps.
Right, exactly. So to now explain what RIR means, when I'm doing a set, so I have my 2 top sets for the same example, 8 to 10. My first set, I'm going to be able to get 10 for like 10 reps where I could have done 12. That's a 2 RIR. I could have done 2 more reps. Now, the way we moderate intensity and the way we increase things is over time, we decrease that RIR. So when I first start out, it's a higher RIR. I'm leaving a little bit more in the tank, but as the weight goes up and it starts to get more difficult, that RIR comes down until the last week of the mesocycle or whatever you want to call it, where I'm basically hitting all out failure.
And then you would reset and build back up again.
Right. Okay. So let's kind of dive into your side of it first, and let's talk about the pros and cons of that, and then we can go to the other side after that. So I'm going to let you take the floor.
Sure. So I mean, the reason I do complete failure is because, I mean, honestly, to me, it's easier almost because your only gauge is to do as much as you possibly can. You don't have to think about, do I have 1 left in the tank? Do I have maybe 2 on this day left in the tank? That's the problem with reps in reserve for me is you kind of lose that ability to just bust your ass and just train to the max without thinking about all those extra things during the set. And for me personally, when I'm in the set, I'm so fucking locked in that like I don't want to be thinking about, okay, that's when I need to stop. You know, that's I just want to go completely out, and then I want my all out set the next week to be a little bit more than the one before. So I mean but where you would use something like a reps and reserve approach for me personally. Who's shaking your butt? Me personally, I would say the only time I wouldn't go to all out failure is on something that's not as safe.
Yeah.
So like a barbell squat, obviously, I'm not going to go to full failure on a barbell squat because I would probably die. A deadlift I might, because you can kind of safely bail on a deadlift halfway because the weight's not on you. But yeah, that's why I mean, certainly I go harder on things that are safer. So like a hack squat, I can take that pretty much to complete failure, bottom out if I need to, and I'll be fine. Whereas, you know, something else that's more dangerous, I probably won't take it that far just because of the risk.
Right. And with the way my training program is split up, it's very like basically the same. It's just a matter of with the bigger compounds, we're focused on that intensity with the RIR, but with things like lateral raises or a bicep curl or a tricep extension, we're taking that to failure until I can't do it.
Yeah.
Because I mean, sure, freak accidents can happen where you tear your bicep or you tear your tricep doing some stupid shit like that. But
you can kind of feel that coming a few reps ahead of time. Whereas a squat, if you're fucked halfway in a squat, what are you going to do? You know,
yeah, exactly. So it's a much safer movement. Like if I'm struggling to get that up, I'm not that worried about or serious injury. So as far as like those kinds of things, I definitely push all the way and go to complete failure. And then it's a better way for me to push myself without killing myself, you know, because so you're 100% right with it's easier in the fact of like, it's pretty obvious when you've hit failure, you know, but as we've already discussed, like how many people really know what failure is for themselves? I think.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, for the vast majority, the approach that you're using, I'm sorry, you go ahead.
So did we say that before or after we started recording? I think we said it before we started recording.
Say it again. Yeah. Say it again.
Well, so most people don't fucking know what failure is. So we watch videos, like what we were talking about before we started is like we watch videos and we see people do 8 reps and it's like, bro, you still had 4 more. Easy. You just told yourself it was 8, right? And that was where you were supposed to go. So it's until somebody knows how to train properly and execute properly, it's hard to take them to that point of failure. And then you also have to get in their mind because it takes so much to be able to get under a load that you think is going to fucking hurt you. Like
big time. Yeah. Most people just don't even go into the gym with that level of energy at all. Like before a heavy set of deadlifts or something, I'm sitting there, I'm thinking about like dark, fucked up shit because I need to trigger some kind of adrenaline response because that's how you get the most output is to trigger some kind of adrenaline response. Yeah. So, I mean, whatever you got to do that. But the vast majority of people that train as a hobby, they don't know how to do that. I mean, they can't do that. And most of them don't want to do that because, I mean, that's not a great place to be, you know?
For sure. And I mean, it's just a matter of like, it's not hard to go in and train. It's hard to have the mentality to push yourself to that level. You know, like, are you really willing to get under a hack squat with 7 plates and do it until you can't do it again? And to where you might dump it on the ground. Like, are you really willing to do that? Or you just think you are? Or you're willing to kind of half-ass do it and you did it for 6 when you could have gotten 10 or 12. Like, so are you really willing to push that envelope?
Right. And if you are, then low volume training, you will get more results than you ever could possibly do any other way. But if you're not, then that's what high volume is for. The extra sets makes up for you not being able to actually take one set completely to fucking failure. So, I mean, either one can work just depending on your level. But I do believe that low volume is the most efficient way to do it, but only if you can really fucking take a set far because you don't get backup sets, really. That's what I kind of consider high volume is to be. You have your work sets and you have some backup sets in there to kind of make up for the fact
that wasn't heavy enough, so I can do one more set. And
right,
like, whereas like when it's on paper that like all I have is like one or two sets, three at the absolute max. It's like I've got to make sure these count. You
Yeah.
know,
Oh, yeah.
when you're chasing that volume to be the thing that causes the adaptation response, you can throw in another set and it not necessarily like mess you up.
Yeah.
Um,
Right. Someone like that can throw an extra set, no problem. Whereas me, if I throw in a third set where I haven't been doing a third set, that'll wreck me for fucking. I'll feel that for 2 weeks. I'll be like over the edge fatigue wise for a week or two.
right. And I think I think your way of training is almost a prerequisite before going into something like RIR, because how can you gauge where 1 to 2 reps in reserve is if you don't even know where failure is?
Failure. Yeah.
So, like, even to a certain extent, I think you do need to go through a block at least of like learning what that is. And this is the RIR stuff is, it's a great way to kind of learn that too, because like I said, you slowly bring that RIR down over time, where it's like, okay, I can see a difference week to week of like how hard each set was, so it is another way. Like, I guess you could honestly, now I'm thinking the other way, where RIR could also be a great way to teach you
For
failure.
beginner. Yeah. I was
So,
gonna say that earlier. Yeah.
yeah, so they kind of like, they can kind of play off of each other, because I do still take sets to failure. I do that stuff, but in its time and place. It's not every single time, because there was a period of time where I was training with Adam, after a post contest, like after a show, and we had already gone a little while after the show, but like we trained together for the show and then continued after. So after a
Right.
few months, after our bodies started to recover and we had some healthy body fat levels on us, we went into the Dorian Yates style, like you do, of 4 days a week, just absolutely smashing um, everything every time and going all out for a few sets. And it worked great for a very short window. And then after a while, he wanted to keep doing it because he felt fine, but I was banged up, dude. My shoulder hurt before the labrum tear. My shoulders were hurting, my elbows were hurting, my knees were hurting, like everything hurt. And it
Yeah.
could be a matter of like shitty programming to begin with.
It could
Um,
have been a matter of you were just doing maybe a couple sets too extra. Like maybe he had a slightly higher ability to recover from volume than you did, and
right,
if you're matching him on volume, you might need only one top set for an exercise where he's doing two, and
right,
those extra sets can pile up on you, and that can accumulate. You can accrue so much fatigue and
right.
not even know until you're like, holy shit, like I can't even do it.
Right. And then again, it goes back to what we touched on earlier, where I was digging a 10-foot hole and only filling it back up with 6 feet of dirt.
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah, there's definitely a number of things that could have been involved with that. But now that I do have mostly the issue with the shoulder, for the most part, the rest of my body is okay. We all have our little nagging pains here and there, but because of my shoulder, this style works a lot better for me, because even on pulling movements, my shoulder does give me some issues at times, because it's not necessarily the shoulder itself, it's the other muscles surrounding it. So like, I have a slight compensation in my traps. That's like my traps are tilted forward, or at least what it feels like, and it's causing pain. So some rowing movements cause me issues, and then obviously pressing, I can't do anything overhead anymore, not for a sufficient amount of load, without ending up in pain. Um,
Really,
yeah, so
even like a neutral.
I haven't tried it. I ditched them. My shoulders have still been growing without it, so
Yeah, I mean your shoulders aren't a weak point, so
yeah. I don't know that I would agree with that, but they're getting there.
like,
They're getting
they're
better.
not like so glaringly bad that like it's clear you're not doing presses.
Right. Exactly, and that's where the programming itself kind of comes into play, because um, setting up my training style, and you have a very similar one where you're touching the body part more often during the week.
Yeah.
I'm able to get away with more of that because I don't have that much volume across the week with my shoulders, but I can make each day really intense for the sets that I do have. And I was I checked in with John last week, and he actually sends voice notes back usually to any of my responses. And he told me in the voice note, he was like, now I want to keep everything the same, but if there's anything that you feel like might need a little extra attention, that's the kind of stuff that I need to be made aware of. So I told him, like, shoulders is a weak point for me, and I feel like we could get a little bit more out of it by adding in some more shoulder volume. To which I thought, okay, he's going to add some shit in. But I was wrong. He was like, no, let's not do that. Let's keep it where it is, because on a muscle group that is weaker and it is not necessarily a genetic strong suit, if you are in a phase where you do not have a lot of calories, it's very easy to make that muscle start to blur and fade out and lose size and strength if you start doing too much. Again,
as fresh as possible. Yeah.
Piece of it. So because it's really weird to say that because it's a genetic weakness, or what I would consider a genetic weakness as far as my body, usually people say you need to do more for it. You know, he said the opposite with this, at least within this phase. Now, he said the opposite in the growing phase. We could add more volume in because there's more food to help with the growing and adaptation. But that was very enlightening to me. That was really cool to hear.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people do that. They'll be prepping for a show and they're like, I got to pound my quads to get them in, to come in for the show, but then they end up with stringy flat quads, and like, maybe you should have just done some lower volume basic compounds and left it be.
That separation starts to blur and go away because there's so much inflammation in that area that the body's not able to respond to. But yeah, I mean, as far as our styles, we're fairly similar. It's just a matter of like, I kind of slowly ramp myself up into failure, where it's like every time you go in, it's all out, right?
And I mean, my style will catch up to you a little bit faster. So I mean, I may need to take a deload every 8 to 12 weeks where you're fine to just carry on.
Yeah.
But I mean, even during that deload, if you have your volume locked in enough, I'll just go down to maybe one top set, and I'm still able to, take PRs that whole week, but I'm dropping enough fatigue from all the extra volume of complete failure sets, and then I can go right back where I was.
Right. And when it comes to getting yourself like it, I feel like 2 top sets is a lot easier for a lot of people to figure out. I feel like dropping down to 1 is something that's a very advanced thing, unless it's something like, well, again, like with these higher compound exercises, like to be able to say I gave everything on 1 set and that's all I could do was 1 set, that's hard for a lot of people to be able to gauge. Like if you have a certain rep range, it's like you might have a good idea of what you think you can do, but it's like there's a lot more at risk with your style of training when it comes to dropping it down that way. Not I don't want to say risk, but there's how am I trying to say this? Like there's not a lot of extra room for
room for error, really. Yeah.
Thank you. No room for error. My fucking brain.
But I mean, that's why a logbook is so fucking important, because I mean, you do a set, you did this for 8 last week. You don't got to guess this time, because okay, this is what I got for 8. I better fucking get it for 9 and 10. Otherwise, like, what the fuck am I doing? Like because you have that tool directly telling you what to do, and it's not someone else telling you what to do. It's yourself telling you what to do, because you took that set to failure last time. So that was your failure point. So you have to eke that failure point forward a little bit this week. And I mean, that's a perfect way to, so you're not just going into a set guessing, like, I think I gave it my all. Like, did you beat your logbook? Right. I mean, if you beat your logbook, then, check mark, job done. Otherwise,
And I think the beating the logbook thing applies a little bit more to a mass gaining phase, more so prep phase, because there's
prep, you just be crossing your fingers hoping you can maintain your strength, like.
Exactly. I was just about to say, like, there's going to come a point where you're just not going to have the fuel to be able to hit PRs every week. And like where it becomes difficult is now figuring out whether it's a matter of have you hit a plateau in training, or are you just in that point of prep where you just got to suck it the fuck up and just like hammer down and
Yeah.
find knots, you know? So that's the difficult part there in trying to figure out where to go um, forward if you are getting to that point of like, okay, the logbook numbers are starting to fall. You know, they're not, the trend is going down. And I think if it's one of those things where with prep, there can be like ups and downs with this where like you make some progress and then it'll dip back down for a little while because we all have those days on prep where it's like you can't get it together. But then it can creep back up. You know, I think if it has to be a consistent trend of like it stayed the same, it dropped, and okay, it's time to change something, or it's time to back off and deload and let the body recover. Is that kind of how you do, how you know when to do your deloads?
Yeah, I mean, usually it's like I can feel fatigue and kind of how, I mean, for me personally, kind of how fatigue manifests is, I mean, everybody kind of feels it in a different way, but for me, if I'm feeling sleepy in the gym or not fired up like to go to the gym, I know I just have some kind of systemic fatigue because usually I'm fucking ready to go. So once I start to feel, if I'm like yawning in the gym, then I'm like, I know something's up because, you know, my level of stimulants are the same. My food's the same. My sleep's pretty much consistent every night. So I know that if I'm not feeling right, then it's probably fatigue building up. So then that's when I would put in a deload week probably.
Yeah. Now, how do you run your deloads? Like, I know you mentioned bringing it down to one set. Do you move away from failure during that time and kind of just go through the movement so that your body can fully rest, or are you still kind of going all out on some stuff?
Most of the time I'm able to just take off that back off set and still progress my top set in a week. And that's that drop in volume. I'm cutting my volume almost in half. So that drop in volume is usually enough for me to kind of shake the fatigue off. But after that week of deloading, if I'm still kind of like feeling kind of meh, I'll just take days rest. So maybe 4 or 5 days completely off from the gym. And I've never had to really do that. I've maybe had to take an extra day off, but I mean, usually by that point you're ready to go. And if you're not, then something's probably pretty fucking wrong.
Probably something like seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah. Typically what I do is I just back way off. Like intensity is much lower. The workouts there's really no intensity. It's just going through the motions, squeezing the muscle, like kind of basically chasing a pump really during my back off phases. Yeah. And with that pump, I'm not getting a pump from like a heavy fucking set, right? It's just real light squeezing and making it work as hard as possible. Now, you obviously maybe not everybody knows, but you just got your hernia surgery, and you are now like in the recovery process with all of that. How do you plan on structuring your training as you come back into the gym?
So I mean, usually at 6 weeks is when you're cleared. Your scar tissue it's healed as it's gonna get. So I mean, at 6 weeks, I mean that's pretty much green light for me to go balls to the wall. But starting probably at 4, I'll go back to the split I was on before my surgery. Just have no hard bracing, no heavy free weight movements. So I mean, lots of machine presses, machine rows, pull downs, all that stuff is safe because it doesn't require a lot of abdominal bracing. Right. And I'll still probably do the single leg stuff for legs because it's just the amount of full body bracing is way less doing a single leg versus like a normal 2-leg leg press. So I'll probably do that to creep in, and obviously reps will be much higher. Probably won't be my usual like veins busting out of my head sets, but I mean it'll be hard and it'll be enough because I've taken so much time off. That it'll be enough to kind of wake my body back up and get it responding again. But it's just, I mean, it's going to be slowly creeping back into it. Maybe taking one hard set here, seeing how I feel the next day. Maybe the next workout I do 2 or 3 hard sets. I mean, just slowly ramping it up like that.
RIR.
Yeah, pretty much RIR. But at that 6-week mark, I know that like it's pretty much green light. My doctor told me that it's as healed as it's going to get, so nothing else can happen. So pretty much 6 weeks, I'll just be back to normal.
Cool, man. I look forward to seeing how that all comes back together. Another thing that just popped in my head that I wanted to touch on when it comes to how we set up how you and I set up our own training with the 2 sets. Like the thing that is blowing people's minds when I'm doing these sessions with them is like, really, only 2 sets? Like when you look at it on paper, it's like, what the fuck is this? You know, and like John Jewett said today, he was like, I often get labeled as the low volume guy. And it's like, that's not necessarily the case. He's like, yeah, on paper, I have 2 sets written down because those are the sets that did something. But when I'm first starting out, I might have done 3 or 4 warm-up sets. So
Yeah, I did warm-up sets. Yeah.
technically I did 6 sets. So it's like, obviously those first 3 or 4 sets or whatever is nowhere near failure. And it's just to get the neurological response and the like the muscle kind of in that movement pattern. But I mean, there is still a little bit of a stimulus there. And then, so they don't really count, you know, we're not counting those, we're not writing those down, we're not tracking those, but it's still accrued volume over time. So it's hard for people to wrap. I don't know why I did that. I don't know why that meant hard. It's hard for people to wrap their mind around the idea that like there's only 2 sets. It's like, yeah, because you're taking your way of thinking with the 3 to 4 for 10 to 12, where your last 2 are hard, into this. And it's like, how the fuck are you gonna do? Like, how do I
sit down leg press and that's set 1? Like what? Like that's what most people think.
Yeah, right. Like, no, you put a plate on the leg press and did it for 30. That's not a set. Like, it was easy. Like, sure, you can still grow if you do a set of 30, but it still has to be close, at least close to failure. But I think kind of the takeaway from both of our styles is you have to at least get close to failure and real failure, and find out what that point is for you. Now, I would not ever tell a beginner, hey, go get on bench press and find out your failure for 10 reps. Like, I'm not going to do that with somebody. But someone who's intermediate or advanced, these are the kind of things that I would do with them, where it's like, you're going to need to take a little block of time where you find out what real failure is. And you're going to send me videos of it, and I'm going to tell you whether you're on point or not. Like,
yeah, that's something I do with everybody I coach. I'm like, first week I want to see your top sets. And then if it's shitty, which most of the time it is, I'm like, you probably have 5 more there. Then I'll kind of scale it up, and each week they'll show me until I'm happy with it, and then I know that they're kind of good. But yeah, you can't just give people a low volume program and say they're probably doing it right, because chances are they're half-assing it so hard.
For sure. And then in that circumstance, if they are doing a low volume training split and they are half-assing it, they are going to not make results.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
If you're taking that approach of like the 3 to 4 and taking it into this low volume training, like, you're gonna hate it. You're gonna be
low volume can either be the absolute best or not do shit for you. Like, it comes into how hard you can train.
Like, if that's the case and you only like you're half-assing that training, you're gonna think I'm the worst fucking coach on the planet.
Right. Yeah.
Wonder like, how are all of these other people getting results with this? Like, this doesn't make any sense. But that comes down to like having a good coach, and having someone who does do things like that, where it's like, hey, send me videos, let me figure out if you're doing this right or not, and making sure that we're training hard enough to where we're able to stimulate that growth. But yeah, I think I'm sufficient. Like, I'm happy with everything we touched on. Was there anything else that you thought of during this that you want to kind of close out on, or?
That's good, man. I mean, I feel like we should even do a whole nother episode on exercise selection. So I don't even want to get into that, because I feel like we can talk about that forever. So I mean, that's good. I mean, we touched on, low volume and kind of reps reserve versus low volume, and what the difference is and what the benefits are of each. So
yeah, and again, like, I think that'll be another place where, for the most part, we agree. But I know that you have some strong feelings about activation exercises prior to heavier lifts. So I know that we can play a little back and forth with that one as well. So that'll be a good one. We'll figure out the next day for like next week or the week after or whatever to kind of touch on that. But I just want to say thank you to everyone who is listening to this, who is reposting these things and spreading the word. I can't do this without you guys. So please, if you like the podcast, you like listening to me and Brad fucking shoot the shit for a little while, and you learn something, please post it up on social media and spread the word. Tag me in it. I'll repost all that stuff. Help me, I help you. So let's get this thing going and see what we can do with it.
Questions and topics to cover, because I mean, if anything you send us, literally, we'll throw it in a video and we'll talk about it and give our point of views on it. I mean, just give it to one of us, or.
Okay, so before we go, I'm gonna have to call somebody out.
All right.
So, and you're gonna know exactly who it is when I start talking, and I'm gonna tell him that I called him out on this because I got one question with the thing we put up. Yeah, legit one question. Like it's Jesus Christ.
What cycle is best for muscle? Yeah.
Oh, it's not even that, bro. I know you and I have both talked to this guy before, but Colin Soja, his question was getting in food for those who struggle to eat.
Everybody struggles. I struggle to eat every day. Eat it.
Right. Colin, eat. Fucking just eat it. Cook it. Make it look like when you look at it, if you look at it and say that's a lot of food, add fucking more.
Yeah.
Like, I understand that it's hard. Like, a bulking phase is one of the most difficult. Like, I would much rather be in the phase that I am now where it's 7 p.m. and I'm like ready to eat my own, like my stomach is eating my spine right now. I would rather be feeling like this than feel like I do in the off season because I'm sluggish, I'm tired, and my stomach is like usually not bloated, but it's like full. And I still have to get more meals in. So there's no tips, there's no tricks, there's nothing I can tell you that is going to make up for just sitting the fuck down and eating it.
Yeah. Flip that switch in your mind and say, I'm not eating for pleasure. I'm not eating to have a tasty meal. I'm eating for a goal. I'm eating for performance. I'm eating to get a certain result and increase my performance in the gym. I mean, that's, if you want it bad enough, that food is just food, man. Just eat it. I mean, it takes me sometimes, like at my heaviest, I'm sitting there for 45 minutes getting a meal down. Right. But I mean, just suck it up. I mean, it's not that bad. there's people starving, you know, you're pretty lucky to be participating in a sport that, you know, is like almost competitive eating.
Right. Yeah. Right. And it circles back to training as well. So like we've been talking about training intensity. If you're training hard and you are doing some cardio to kind of get some stuff moving and keep your metabolism burning, you're going to be able to eat more.
Yeah, so, let's give them a few things to help, not just say, you know, fuck you, eat.
It's like the only Colin, I love you. You're awesome. So hopefully don't take this offensively, but we've answered this question before, and that's why it's like, dude, eat. But
fasted cardio is great. Do that in the morning. It'll boost your metabolism all day. Do the apple cider vinegar with some lemon juice in the morning before you do your fasted. Boost your digestion. Take a digestive enzyme with every meal. It'll decrease your bloat. You won't be feeling so full for as long. Use foods that you like. I mean, if oatmeal sits heavy on your stomach, don't eat oatmeal at all. If fucking white rice sits heavy on your stomach, find something else. If you got to eat, if every meal is, you know, a bagel and ground beef, then that's the foods that work for you. Don't feel like you got to eat this certain meal because this bodybuilder does it. I mean, it's all, you know, clean food. You know, lean proteins, just find the ones that work for you, eat as much of them as you possibly can get down, and then use something like whey, use something like a nut butter to get in those extra calories.
Colin is like when I you getting feedback? I heard myself. Colin's a lot like I was when I first started this, where like my metabolism was really high. Like I had to fight. I fight my metabolism. Like Colin stays fairly lean. So yeah, you're gonna struggle, man. It's gonna be hard. You have to fight that. So you're gonna have to eat more. And a great way to get in more calories where it's not really a lot of volume of food are fats. So it's really easy to get a lot of calories from fats, but that's a fine line to play with because If you get too many fats, it can slow down digestion, and then you can
You want to keep that away from your training window for sure. So like maybe first meal and last meal of the day, those can be really high fat. But I wouldn't start putting in a lot of olive oil in your pre-workout meal or anything like that. But yeah, like oils, throwing a couple whole eggs in your meal. Those are, I mean, that adds up really fast.
Right. And then like you touched on, pick foods that you can get down. Like I love sweet potatoes, but in large quantities, it gives me a lot of gas and it bloats me a lot. I'm handling them fine right now because my body is just burning through everything. So it's not really an issue in this diet phase, but find stuff that your body likes. Seth Feroce is a big proponent on chicken and rice. Starting his diet off with chicken.
That works for 9 out of 10 people, man.
Make it as basic as possible and then add to it from there. Start with chicken and rice, get your digestion down, and get it as good as possible to where you feel good and you can get more food in. And then you can start switching some variables, adding in salmon, adding in beef, adding in those higher fat cuts of meat and high fat fish. Get those extra calories from the fat. And then things like beef does have creatine in there, so that will help out as well. So just little things like that, man, will really help out a lot.
You should work out carbs too. Cyclic dextrin. You can drink 200 carbs of cyclic dextrin. It'll go through like Gatorade. Like it's so easy, man. Do cyclic dextrin, couple scoops pre, couple scoops intra, couple scoops with your post. That's 300 carbs right there that you just got down like water, you know?
Right. And Colin, I love you. I hope that this helped you, but I'm not answering this question again.
At least it wasn't a cycle question. I hate that.
Yeah, whatever.
What cycle should I run for this? Shut up.
Oh, yeah. But anyways, all right, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed our little rant there at the end. We'll be back on next week. Peace.